welcome back. I wanted to jump on here because honestly I was feeling inspired after a couple of different conversations with people, and I wanted to touch base on this idea of manifesting. So if you haven't heard of manifesting, the idea behind this is creating what you want, an outcome you want, or getting something that you want based on the power of thoughts and intentions. And I am a huge believer in this, but I think that a lot of things like the law of attraction and some of these manifesting gurus that are out there are missing a big chunk of what actually goes into manifesting. And that is where your mind state is actually at. So we're going to break this down a little bit today. I think that there is a huge power of our intentions and the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we express things, which does create impact in our life. I love the idea of magic, and I think that because we have so many different cultural and worldly views on the mysticism piece of magic, sometimes that gets wrapped up into what's really going on behind the scenes for us. So the idea that I want to express here is that our inner magic, our ability, our intention, our power, combined with science and facts that we know about the brain and what's going on behind the scenes for us in any given moment, that's where true mysticism magic exists. When I'm explaining this to people, when I respond to people online, when I'm talking with friends, when I'm helping a client, how I break this down is that you have to start with where is your mind, because your mind is doing so much of this work. So we have other videos on trauma and the brain, and if you haven't checked those out, those are great. We're not going to necessarily get into all of that, but what I want you to do is pay attention to the mind state that you're in. So if you're in a trauma mind state, the only thing your brain is capable of focusing on is survival. If you're in a highly emotional state, the only thing that your brain is going to be focused on is how to get through that emotion or get out of that circumstance that's creating that stress or that fear, that apprehension. We also have our internal systems. So the different thoughts, beliefs, parts of us that are enacted in any given way. So let's say that I truly, within my whole being, believe that I can get 1 million followers on this page. We'll just throw that out there. So yeah, there are definitely just actionable steps that I can do, but part of me even being able to get to those actionable steps is going to come from a place where does it feel safe? You know, when I was starting this YouTube channel, I was a little apprehensive about the idea of being on camera or really putting myself out there, sharing my thoughts. And some of that comes from these internal dialogue systems. It can be something as silly as, really putting yourself out there in the 5th grade. This is not a real story for me, but putting yourself out there in the 5th grade and someone shooting that idea down and then you just deciding that it's not worth it. It's not worth the risk of putting yourself out there. So now that is part of your internal dialogue system. When we don't understand these things, when we can't create mindfulness around what is going on inside of us, we can sit there and say 1 million followers, 1 million followers, 1 million followers, come up with all the affirmations. I can, write 1 million over and over and over and over. But if what is also being held true in my mind is you really shouldn't be putting yourself out there and this isn't worth the risk, I'm simultaneously all that good intention that I'm planting. It's like if you planted a seed and then you never went to go check on it, you never watered it, you never gave it the conditions that it really needed to grow, and you really shunned it, or even were like pouring hot coffee all over it, it's not gonna grow, right? So this is sort of the balance of what drives me a little bit bananas around the manifestation and new aged communities, is that they're missing this huge link of your mind is the tool that you're using to create the intentions, to create the manifestations. So we have to get our mind right. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. That doesn't mean you have to, have no issues in your life. That's probably physiologically impossible in this day and age. But it does mean that you have to create this witness or this ability to say, oh, I'm experiencing fear and apprehension. Let me experience that, move through that, move past that, and recreate this intention. That is an important piece of this. We also have an inner critic. And a lot of people, I believe, get a little critical about the inner critic, because in my experience as a trauma therapist, this might not be everyone's experience, but in my experience, the critic is really there as a questioner or a guide. So I like to think of, back in the early days of humanity, whatever that looks like for you, but we know that people lived in caves at one point. And I like to imagine that when it got dark, everyone went in the cave. And that one day there was this young person and they were like, I want to know what's going on outside the cave at night. And everyone was like, this is a crazy idea. You cannot do that. That's so dangerous. We've never gone outside of the cave at night. And so there is this internalized questioner of, oh my gosh, would it be safe? And one night, this person decides to sneak out of the cave. And as they're getting ready to step outside of the cave at night, they have that questioner. No shame, no judgment, but just, is this going to be okay? Are you going to be safe? That is our inner critic. It's there as a protector. It's there as a guide. And what happens, in my experience, is that it opens the door for something like shame to come in. So we question will I be safe if I step outside of this cave? And then immediately the shame, all of that judgment, all of the maybe best of intentions of our loved ones being like, that's a crazy idea, you can never do that, come in and start to create doubt, start to create who are you to do this? You're not even worthy of being an explorer. You're going to fail at this like you fail at everything. That's shame. So the critic gets a bad rap because it's doing its job, and on the tail end of that come in these doubts, fears, apprehension, and shame. This feeling like I won't be worthy, I won't belong, I'll fail, and then everyone will laugh at me. And that is the part that keeps us stuck. That is the part that keeps us away from truly being able to tap into that magic, because our brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do in those circumstances. Maybe not like the shame and fear and apprehension, but it's questioning something. That part of it is very natural. The shame, the apprehension, and the fear are conditional responses. Going back to the brain and trauma video, you will hear me talk about, the transgenerational patterns of trauma, and that sometimes we just come into this world with certain apprehensions and fears. Nothing had happened. It's a part of the DNA sequence that we have. Now, we can overcome that. We can learn tools. We can learn ways to work with that. But again, that's about being able to realize, be able to be aware, and then work with it. Be able to witness it and experience it and move past it. And that is where I think a lot of people, again, get lost, is it's there and then they're fighting against it. It's like, I'm going to say this affirmation 100 times, and every time I have an apprehension, I'm going to say it 100 more times. Well, really all you're doing is creating an internal conflict. And don't get me wrong, affirmations, gratitude statements, they all put us in a better mindset. Don't stop doing those things if that's what you believe in, if that's what helps you. But if we're only doing that and we're not working on the inner dialogue that is challenging that's creating obstacles for us, that's keeping us in bed or keeping us distracted from actually planting that seed and attending to it so that it grows, then we're only doing half the work and maybe only getting half the results or not getting any results at all. So this is really why I feel passionate about coming on here and talking about it, is that I see so many people getting defeated. And look, I've listened to the Law of Attraction. I've read things. I think it's beautiful work that people have done and created. I think that it can work. It's just we have to get into a thrive, engaged mindset coming from our inner wisdom, working with our ability to calm ourselves, regulate ourselves when things don't go the way that we thought, and be willing to put those actions. And in order to do the actions, again, we have to come back to the mind, the ground in which it's growing from. And that's the part that I just don't hear anyone else talking about right now. So if this is of interest to you and you want to hear more, please subscribe, please comment, please ask questions. I am happy to continue this conversation, but I really just wanted to come on here and give some of that feedback and information out there, because I do worry about people feeling like they're getting this information of if you just will it into existence, and that feels short-sighted in a way that we're not considering our actual biology and the brain and the science behind what is really going on in our neural pathways that creates the ability to have that be true, versus where the blockages are, and being able to do that work. So I hope that this is interesting and helpful for you. Please ask questions. I'm happy to do a follow-up video, and take care of yourselves, and happy manifesting.